So how are we going to look in more depth at the stages of play and how this will support us to determine how we will move forward with our targeted interventions? What we first need to understand is the developmental stages of play in order for us to determine where we actually start. At stage 1, children are developing joint attention through sensory and motor and exploratory play. In stage 2, they're developing more functional play and increasing the structure of play. In stage 3, they are developing imaginative and cooperative play. These stages obviously follow the typical developmental stages that we usually observe from the early years, birth till 5. Play actually starts with baby steps, systematically breaking a play and social activity into its component parts so that it is no longer a jumble of language, objects and action that has no meaning for our child with autism. Teaching in very simple steps and elements gives the child a chance to give meaning to each action. Teaching the activity in small parts also gives the child's brain a chance to process all the incoming information. We are not on a race, even though at times it feels like it. As they move through the stages, a child begins to take notice of others' play ideas and provide feedback through gesture and eye contact. This then moves on to becoming increasingly creative and spontaneous in their play. How can we determine the stages can be through a developmental play checklist. These checklists can be found in the resource section. If we determine that their level of play is at stage 1, our goals will be focusing on building their awareness and interest in how someone else uses and explores a range of play materials. We will be building their tolerance of having an adult near them in play. We will be supporting them in their exploration of simple toys and their sensory attributes, such as texture and sound. We will be building their eye contact and imitations with an adult or a toy that the adult is actually playing with. We will be building their ability to share an object and to indicate more. What we are hoping they will learn is that learning and interacting is fun and worthwhile. If a child is at stage 1, they have yet to have developed joint attention, and this is a critical element if they are to develop further in their play skills. We will need to begin by following the child's lead. Whatever they're doing, we're going to be doing. We're going to use preferred objects and toys because it is no good presenting them with something they are not interested in. We're going to be doing a lot of commenting on what the child is doing, and we're going to try and make our presence obvious and attract their attention without going overboard. We will need to show an interest and talk about the toy as if they are sharing it with us, and we need to be using the same words and phrases. An example of doing this with a child with autism occurred a few years ago when I was supporting an early childhood worker in trying to engage with a child. At this stage, every time the child saw the ECW, they would take off and try and hide. It had got to this stage. The ECW, although highly skilled, was only approaching it from what she knew to be the best way of trying to engage. But this little boy was profoundly autistic, and he had yet not developed stage 1 skills. So we decided to try something different. He was sitting in the sand pit, just putting sand in a bucket with a spade. So I sat down in front of him, got my own bucket and spade, and just started pouring sand into the bucket just like he was doing. I refrained, which was very difficult to do, from asking questions. I made a few comments. That was all. We kept doing this for a time until I put some sand in his bucket. At this stage, he looked at me, then went back to what he was doing, and I went back to what I was doing. A couple of minutes later, he put a spadeful of sand into my bucket. This was our first connection. And we stayed there for about a half an hour, me putting some in his bucket, him putting some in mine. During this time, I made a few comments, such as Alex put sand in bucket, Helen put sand in bucket. It was difficult not to ask questions. It was difficult not to take it to the next step. At this stage, he then moved on to the painting easel, where there was already paper. Without even putting a smock on, he started painting onto the paper. I then started painting on the easel next to him. At this stage again, no connection. I made a few comments. Alex is painting in blue. Helen is painting in blue. I then painted on his paper, to which he looked at me. I then continued painting on my own. The next minute, he painted on my paper with fleeting eye contact, but there again was the connection. This was a very different approach, but the ECW took it on board, and instead of having all these activities planned, she started playing with him where he was at, and we certainly saw a much stronger connection and the development in his play skills. This can be a very different approach for us as educators. We are usually the facilitators of play. We add language, we ask questions, we add adjuncts, and this is not the time to be teaching in our usual way. It is time to just be there. You may not get the feedback or connection for a while, and it may be brief to start with, but this approach will have its successes. We will also need to be aware of how we communicate. It's about saying less, showing more. If we are speaking slowly, allowing them thinking time. We need to be very concrete, concise and clear, and just use key words. We need to match the comments to what they are focusing on and doing. If we need to, we model the symbolic sounds. And what we're trying to do is create a reason for communicating. My putting the sand in his bucket was creating the reason for him to communicate with me. At stage 1, this is very different to what we would expect of a preschool child, more like that of a young baby. I have provided some suggestions over the next couple of slides that I won't go through now, but as you can see, they're very basic. They're very much around cause and effect and will provide you with a few key ideas. The resource document entitled Planning for Intervention will also provide you with a range of ideas for stage 1, as well as the other stages of play. It's important before moving on to stage 2 to assess whether the following abilities have increased. If you feel that the above goals have been met, then it is time to move on to stage 2. So we are looking for an increased acceptance of an adult as a participator for brief periods of time. We're looking for increased attending to the adult's actions, for more tolerance in some variations in the play and the way the toys are played with, like me putting sand in his bucket rather than him just continuing to put sand in his own bucket. We're looking for an increase in interest in basic social interactions, and we're hoping for generalisations so that it occurs in different play activities. This change may well take the longest to move through, so be prepared. Remember, you're not on a race. So in stage 2, we're looking at increasing the engagement in functional play with a range of toys and activities. We're looking for more imitation of toys in different ways. We're looking at more sharing of space and equipment with both adults and peers, and we're looking for turn-taking with an adult for several turns. We're looking at acting out familiar scenes of everyday activities, for example, in the home corner, making a cup of tea. What we are moving towards is introducing basic social skills, which we hopefully will mean that we have some social relationships developing, even if it is just with us first as adults before we move on to peers. So we're going to continue to develop functional play skills. And although this skill building is more connected to our everyday teaching, it is still more directed and intense. It doesn't happen without planned approaches and interventions. So we're looking to extend the use of the play materials. We're going to facilitate exploring playing with toys in their intended function. So instead of just lining up the cars that they used to be doing, they are now able to set up a racetrack and use the cars to have a race to see who comes first. They're going to be able to demonstrate how to vary and extend the play. We're hoping to extend their attention span and their imitation skills and the use of turn-taking language. We're going to gradually introduce one other peer in their play space with same toy using their interests. The word functional is key here. Remember, they are static learners, not dynamic. As part of, again, building their functional play skills, we're hoping to encourage them to respond to comments and simple directions, such as give me, put the. Gradually increasing the requests, e.g. push the car. Imitate what the child is doing with the toy. Take the toy, comment on it, and wait for them to reach for it. Interact with toys at eye level, so gaze can move from toy to your face. Point and label. Extend play with new toys and materials. We will model acting familiar scenes with real-life objects and use visual supports to support requesting and choice-making. Again, we need to consider our communication strategies, simplifying the verbal language using short sentences, using natural gestures and body language, e.g. pointing, using their name rather than you, and using more visual supports, for example, using real photos, rather than bombarding them with lots more language, which we would be tempted to do at this stage of their development. Before moving to stage 3, we should see an increase in interactive play, an increase in playing with a range of toys and activities, being able to tolerate simple demands. We should see more functional use of the toys that they're using and more imitation of simple actions. And we should be able to see the connections between photos and real objects. So if we feel they're ready to move on to stage 3 or at stage 3, our goals would involve supporting them in turn-taking in simple games, following simple rules in games, interacting socially during play using verbal and non-verbal communication. We should be supporting them in working with others towards a goal in play. We should be focusing on more engagement in pretend play with a peer using role play. And lastly, looking and extending and building upon the playmates and pretend play ideas. I guess we could say there are two main goals of Stage 3. We're wanting to encourage them to cooperate with others through turn-taking, working towards a common goal and adapting to the changes in play, which often comes along when play sequences are actually happening. We want them to develop imaginative play, understanding that others have different thoughts and ideas, and then to respond to these dynamic changes, increasing their theory of mind, and again, moving from static to dynamic. So how can we develop this imaginative and cooperative play? We can introduce games with simple rules, people or toys. We can use video modelling to teach cooperative and pretend play. Children love videoing others. It's easy these days on our phones or on iPads to get them to video what others are doing, to role model for them so they can video what you're doing. This is a very powerful way of teaching, and there's a lot of research on how to do this. So I would encourage you to use this form because we know iPads in particular are an interest of these children. We can use learning stories and social stories, set up activities for shared goals, encourage an understanding of others' points of view, the theory of mind. We need to build on their existing pretend play skills. We will be starting to comment and ask questions to develop the creative thinking in their play, unlike in Stage 1, where we were very limited in what we could be commenting on. We will continue to encourage their pretend play with a wider range of toys. We will practice substituting an object for something else. We will play dress-ups, encourage role play, and continue to still use their interests. We've now looked at the 3 stages of play that each and every child needs to go through if we are to successfully develop authentic play skills for these children. Now refer back to the checklist that you created and use this basic information to determine what stage of play your child is at. You may then wish to use the guides provided to assist you in this task. We may feel like we're on a race, as I mentioned before, and we want to get there as quickly as possible. But we remember we are on a continuing journey. Remember, each stage needs to be achieved before moving on to the next. It's important to know which stage they're at and start there. Following their lead is very critical in those early stages. We need to provide multiple opportunities for practice and generalisation. We need to be creative and have patience. And we need to celebrate all the small gains as they lead to the ultimate goal. I hope that if you're working with a child with autism, you are now more aware of the importance of teaching play skills in a more targeted way. The links on the screen are a great starting point for you as educators. Also, the highly recommended resource, A Guide for Developing Play Skills, is available for $25 from Autism Spectrum Australia. The resource section also includes some video links around today's topic. Thank you for participating today.